Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone has found a seat. We have to start halfway on time because I am also happy to greet everybody who is joining us online. So this is a hybrid event, and we are very happy to be back after 2 years of absence, but there we were still a little bit present online. I want to give still a special greeting to our colleagues from Euromarché. They're here numerously and they're very dear to us, and I want to give a special greeting to its president, Catherine Trautmann, also former Minister of Culture of France and Mayor of Strasbourg, and one of the reasons why the observatory is located in Strasbourg as part of the Council of Europe. It had to be said. So very welcome. And the brand new executive director, our dear colleague and friend, Susan Newman. And with this, I also would like to say some words on the observatory, very few. Mainly, we have a birthday. We are 30 years old, and that is why, in addition to publications that I hope are very useful to you, you will also find a little birthday notebook and something that, no, it's not a shower cap. It's not a shower cap. Those of you who have a bicycle will know what it is. Okay, so much for that. I would like then to get a bit more serious and really warm you up for the event, which is, as you know, on the circulation of European films. And our subtitle is availability enough can and shall be understood from two different angles. On the one hand, is there enough films available? That's, I think, a question where we have a lot to say as observatory, because we have hard data, which you find also in the focus and many other publications that we have. But then, that's not the only question. There's also the question, is it enough to have films available? And that's yet an entirely different angle. And we want to cover both in today's event, and we want to do it in the following way. We start with the first interpretation of our question and see, do we really have enough films available? So a certain market angle mainly. As you know, we have a database called Lumière VOD, which helps us a lot to verify and to get, I would say, as close to the truth as one can at this moment. And you will have a snapshot presentation by our colleague Patricia Simonis, who will a bit share those findings. And then we will have a panel who goes into more details. And I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Sabine Kermali. I hope I did not too much butcher your name. She's the Executive Vice President for International Distribution in TF1 Studio. We have Mathilde Fiquet, the Secretary General of the European Audiovisual Production Association, CEPI. We also have with us Joan Sala, the Head of Programming at Film In and Festival Manager at Atlantida Film. And last but definitely not least, we have Mark Smith, who is the co-CEO of CineArt. So that's our first panel, which will be moderated by Martin Kanzler, who is the deputy head for our market information. And after that round, we take a next step. We're looking a bit more at the legal angle. And this is where the film issues leave also the market side, and we really see what's the European framework, because the questions that we have are important. So we will have a little introduction as to what this legal framework is and looks like. And that will be done by our colleague Sophie Vallet, who is the senior analyst of our Department for Legal Information. And then, of course, it makes sense to move not to a fireside chat, but I would rather say to a poolside chat, and you will see why. And for that, we are very happy to welcome Giuseppe Abamonte, the Director of Media Policy at the European Commission, who will, embark in a, I would say, bit informal discussion with Maya Capello, another colleague of the observatory who heads the Department for Legal Information. So then you will have pretty much an idea about the frame, the legal frame, and also the intention and possibly already the hopes behind this legal frame. And that's when we can move on and we look forward. And at this point, we enrich the panel by 2 more people because we need there to add also more angles. We need to add the angles of the film funds. So we have for that then Edith Sepp, who will join us, who is the Vice President of the EFAT and also the CEO of the Estonian Film Institute, and she is this year's President of the European Audiovisual Observatory. And because this year we have the presidency of Estonia of the observatory that rotates every year, you know, we have 41 members, the EU and 40 member states. We are also very honored to have the Estonian Minister of Culture with us, Mr. Kallas. Very welcome. I'm very happy that you're here. And then finally, I should not forget to add the last panelist, but you will see her then also on the screen. Also, in a way, a neighbor of the observatory, very dear to our heart, Arte. We need the angle of the broadcasters, especially those that are so active online and so European. So here we welcome Amelie Lehnhardt, the Director of European Development at Arte. And I think you have heard enough. You know what that is for. You know approximately what we are doing. And I hand over to my colleague Martin Kanzler to start really the event. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Susanne. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first panel, the market panel, in which we want to discuss the practical aspects of distributing European films, making them circulate across Europe from a market perspective. In the observatory, being the observatory, we would like to do that with a bit of statistical background. And I'm very happy to introduce to you my colleague Patrizia Simone, who will share with you some interesting facts and figures on the circulation of European films.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everybody. In order to pave the way for the upcoming panel, it's useful to probe one common assumption about European films, that is that they circulate poorly or anyway not enough. Is it true? Well, the answers depend on which angle we decide to adopt, as tracking circulation can address different research questions. Let's first take a look at circulation from a film perspective. Before the pandemic, in the 5 years before the pandemic, on average, a total around 2,000 European films were produced every year. These films were released on average in 3 theatrical markets and 5 VOD markets. Furthermore, 6 films out of 10 were only released in their national markets in cinemas, and 3 out of 10 on VOD platforms. So very few films, European films, benefited from a wider distribution. This means that, yes, from a film perspective, European films do circulate to a limited extent, and much less when compared to US films. But if we switch perspective, the picture also changes. From a provider perspective, European films actually represent a significant share of the film offering, as they account for almost 60% of films on release in cinemas and about 30% of films on release on VOD platforms. In addition, among European films, the share of non-national content is also quite significant. In cinemas, it represents about 70% of European films, and in VOD as much as 80%. When we look at absolute figures, we also notice a remarkable number, a sizable number of European films available. In the European Union plus the UK, we have every year a total of 6,000 European films on release in cinemas and more than 42,000 European films available on VOD platforms. This means that on a country level, we have an average of about 450 European films available in cinemas in each market, and an average of more than 1,000 films available on VOD services in each market. Now, bear in mind, these are average figures, so the actual number of European films can largely vary across markets, depending also on market size. Also, the films available might not be the same across all the markets. You might have different films in different countries. This might also explain why we have a high share of European films, while the average number of release markets is so low. Also, when we talk about number of films on release, let's bear in mind that there are national capacity limits to the overall number of films in distribution, both in cinemas and on VOD platforms. We have an average that goes between 150 and 350 films on release per cinema each year, while the average size of VOD catalogs ranges from 1,000 for SVOD services to 5,000 for TVOD services. So due to these capacity limits, and also coupled with regional difference in supply and demand, it would be difficult to expect to have all films on release everywhere. I would like to conclude with one more finding from one recent observatory report on the circulation of European films. The study identifies a number of observable indicators of related to the VOD availability of theatrical films, including theatrical success, festival awards, and the year of production of the films. In particular, theatrical success, measured by the number of ticket sales, is highly correlated with the VOD presence of films at a later stage. This means that European films with higher than average admissions are more likely to appear to be available in VOD catalogs than films that scored poorly at the box office. So, for instance, only 30% of films with taking less than 1,000 admissions can be found in VOD catalogs, while virtually almost all films taking more than 5 million ticket sales are available online. Another finding is that the number of admission is also positively correlated with the number of VOD markets when the film becomes available on VOD services. Thank you very much. I will be sitting in the audience, and I hope this data can be a useful basis for the upcoming discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pat. I will rearrange to get a bit closer. So, I would like to link our discussion a bit to the figures that we have just seen. And one indicator that we use quite regularly at the observatory is a distinction between national and non-national films, particularly when it comes to exploitation in theatrical and availability on VOD markets. Now, from a statistical perspective, this definitely makes sense, but I would be curious to know how important is that distinction actually for you in your daily business? And I think that question goes primarily to the three representatives who are selling, distributing, and exploiting European films. And perhaps I'd like to start with you, Sabine. From a sales agent's perspective, to which extent does the nationality matter, and how do you treat national and non-national films differently?
I would say that from my perspective at TF1 Studio, where I have a lineup which is mainly made of French movies, mainstream movies, comedies, I have very identified clients across Europe. Cineart is one of them. So I would definitely treat differently a French comedy from an Italian movie that I can have from time to time. And we did have some art house movie as well, and those will be definitely treated differently. I cannot build on the success of comparable movies because each art house movie is somehow different and unique. So I will rely on festival, I will rely on eventually the distributors that previously distributed the director movies. So yeah, every film is treated differently, even among the same nationality somehow as well, you know. So you have the mainstream movies, the art house movies, the crossover ones. So more than the nationality, it's even the typology of the film that is critical. And what is really fascinating for this, as being a sales agent and as being a producer, a distributor, or a platform, you will tell us, is that every film is a prototype. It's really difficult to know what is the recipe to have a success. So that's why the question is really wide. I don't know if, Mark, you have a different perspective on that, but...
Hello? Yeah. No, it's true, and I think if you want the experience of us, you know, Cineart is a distribution company, and I think we can say we love European films. 75% of the film we do are European. And what's important to stress with the work we do is that we finance films. We spend, millions in buying the films and doing the marketing. But we also, by all the work we do, we create the desire for the film, which is super important. So I think in terms of the subject of the conference about circulation, I think circulation is important. But equally, for us, it's also about, the work we do and in a way the market share of the European films that we release, because that's super important for us to be able to still go to TF1 and acquire the films we want to acquire.
Yeah, in this sense, from our experience, it's like very different if you have to work in a national film or you have to work in a European film. If you have a national film, you have like some potential strategies to do that maybe with a non-national film it's more difficult to do. For example, it's the access to the talent. If you have a Spanish movie, maybe it's easier to gain the director, to have the director available to promote your movie. We have, for example, the example of maybe Albert Serra. Here it's premiering his film Pacifiction in the official competition. But with his previous film, Liberté, that he's like a provocateur, a director that always that he's in the media. He says his log lines that they are like very... they impact a lot, and we had access to him to have it during the COVID, the pandemic, for example. We have the access to him to have it in our Instagram channel, doing a direct, So here it's easier to have Albert Serra there than to have maybe a Lithuanian director or maybe an English director due to the language, So in this sense, it's easier, and it's also the fact of the national awards. You know, if you have the possibility of target the movie with national awards, it's more easier to have the impact, the direct impact with the movie to your potential audience, to your target, you know, and this also helps a lot. And also the knowledge about the talent, because maybe in Spain they know about this new emerging actor that he's now appearing in some Spanish series, and now it's in this film. You know, this is easier to do it. The way that we work on it, it's different to do it with a national film or a non-national film, definitely.
So I take it that nationality matters, but not for the fact that it is a foreign film, but rather in terms of the means to promote it differs between access to talent and promotion awards and promotion opportunities between, right. I would like to come back to, if I can, yes, to one figure, this one, namely in absolute terms, the really large number of European films that is available in Europe. And on the other hand, the comparatively low average release markets per individual film. And I'd like to put forward an interpretation. I'd like to know whether you agree with that. To me, it seems the obvious interpretation of that figure seems to me that it is a lot of films available, but it's different films in different markets, and that there is a reason for this. The reason being, on the one hand, that tastes do differ between individual European markets significantly, but also on the other hand, that the European films do differ in their characters, and that they do not cater to a universal audience like US films do, so that the combination of having culturally diverse European films and having diverse audiences would logically mean that it is, from a commercial point of view, not viable to, in theory, make all European films available in all European markets at the same time, simply because there are not enough audiences to audience demand to make this commercially viable. So that would be the hypothesis. Would you agree with this? And could you please comment on striking the right balance between increasing the availability of European films and the commercial viability of doing so in your business? Perhaps now we'll start with Mathilde.
Right. Well, I think you're exactly right, especially from a production point of view. We're going to make film. Obviously, our objective is to have our film seen as widely in as many territories as we want, but we have to strike that right balance, and also we have to cater to an audience and make sure that that film's going to be interesting to the audience. So when you look at a certain number of countries where a particular film is going to be available, sometimes they're going to be in the same regions of Europe, and sometimes not. But often co-production is also a very interesting tool that we use to find partners in other countries, and that's going to make that film available in that certain number of countries. After that, if we do have a film that suddenly strikes the interest, and we don't always know what film's going to strike that interest and suddenly becomes super interesting for a lot of other markets. It's I lost my word here. It's really interesting. It's a very interesting process, and we want to do that. But as you said, audience is not always receptive or interested to the same type of content.
I can confirm that French comedies don't travel to Scandinavia, for example, or to England, you know. So that's a fact.
No, in this sense, in our way of work, that you were totally correct. For us, it's very important when we watch a film. It's not just, okay, I like this film, I want to show this film. We use a lot what I say, it's like the advertising language, you know. It's not important just to say this film is good, this film is good, okay. Which is its potential target? How can I arrive to this potential target? Which are the main factors of this film that helps me to arrive to this potential audience? It's like a work of briefing, you know, and for me in this sense, it's very, very, very important to treat each film differently. We are talking here about European cinema. But no offense, this is Cannes Film Festival, it's not MIPCOM. So it's not the same, the commercial cinema or the art house cinema, you know? So it's like always European cinema. Inside European cinema, there is the commercial cinema, there is the art house cinema, and inside the art house cinema, there are a lot of kinds of movies. We have, for example, the LGBT movies, for example, or as you say, the more popular comedy. So how do we work? And in this sense, I think that it's very, very important, and what we do in filming is to have a strong marketing and communication team, that they work on it, and they work like individually in each film, you know. So I think that this is the way of finding with each of your films your potential audience, because the audience is there. The difficulty is to reach them. There is the key thing, and it's our main goal, you know.
Can you perhaps share what do you do concretely to try to create the demand or the audience for a film?
What we do?
Yeah.
For example, in filming, what we do a lot is to connect our catalog with actuality. You know, for example, this is not European, no, but I have like the first example that it came for me, it's like, okay, for an adult, more a potential adult audience, it's like, for example, when Sean Connery was dead, that he was dead, okay, we had like a classic movie that is, in Spanish, is El Hombre que puede reinar, a John Huston movie, that it's a classical movie that thanks to it, we highlighted in the home. We highlighted in the first page of the home. We put a special for Sean Connery. We had a lot of new releases coming there, but the most watched movie there, it was this film. We make videos about Sean Connery, you know, so in this sense, and we also do a lot relate our catalog with the cinema releases. If there is a film about Kirill Serebrennikov, imagine in the cinema right now, what we do is to promote his previous films, you know, and we are like always very connected to this actuality, and it's a thing that helps a lot in our curational work with the collections, with the different channels, you know. It's the main way of working with a long tail of catalog. In our case, we have more than 15,000 titles. The 80% of this catalog, the 70% of this catalog are European films. So it's not just to work with the new releases, also to keep in mind how is all your library and when is the key moment, the perfect moment to put it, you know, to highlight it. And there is the importance, I tell it again, of having a strong, innovative, bold communication and marketing team. You know, we have to be creative, we have to innovate. This is a key thing, totally.
So it takes quite a bit of investment for each film to...
yeah, in our case, yeah.
And I guess it's the same for you, Mark?
Yeah, no, and it's also very interesting, you know, what you say, because that's coming from a platform, and we are, let's say, more classic distributors, but we work hand in hand with many platforms as well. And I think, you know, even when you think about a platform and the amount of work that you just mentioned that you have to do, that's also what we do for, especially for European films. You need to create the desires, as I was saying. And as a Benelux distributor, we are already managing 3 countries, multiple languages, and even in our small 27 million territory, you see that what works in Belgium or what works in the Netherlands is different. Each year, there's probably 5 or between 5 and 10 European titles that seem to work almost everywhere, and that's la crème de la crème. And that you know, it's quite, let's say, similar across European countries. But then you get to the layer underneath, and then it's really what you say about believing in the film, investing in the film, and matching the film with the audience. You know, so we also have, you know, very strong social media following. We call it the Cinear Club or whatever, which we leverage to make sure that people get it. Free publicity, working with the press, with partners, is the relentless work that we're doing, like you're doing, and, you know, like the timing, when to release. You know, the dates of releases are also different between countries, which is super important because you have to wait for that festival, you have to wait for that moment. So I think for European films, it's not. It's less of a one-size-fits-all for Europe, or one recipe that works with everything. But you have to create the desire. Final point, I think your statistics also show that the success in cinemas is also a big driver. There's a big correlation for what happens in VOD, and that is because the value has been created in that process.
Maybe I can just add something in complement, which I wanted to say earlier, which is about diversity. I think one of the huge added value that we have in European cinema is that we're extremely diverse, and we're extremely diverse because we have a lot of markets and a lot of different culture. And obviously that diversity creates gems that are absolutely amazing, but also means that we do have content that is not directly meant for all the different culture that we have. And I think it's a very important point to take into consideration. And your extrapolation of the figures in the report, I think, show that quite well. Some will be for one country, some will be for a region which shares some commonalities, some will be the creme de la creme that you can actually distribute across more countries. But not all films are necessarily meant for that. And I was speaking with one of my producers very recently, actually, we were Tuesday in Lisbon about that. And he said something very interesting about when you make a film, and if you are trying to reach a broader audience, you're also going to integrate certain differences when you're actually making the films. And he used a very example, which I never thought of, which is, if I'm trying to make a film in partnership with Americans, for instance, I will not necessarily show someone smoking. Well, if I were doing my film just for the Czech market, this was a Czech producers, so I would not even question that. So there are also differences at the production level depending on what we want to, what aspiration we have for our films, but we can never anticipate. It's also going to be sometimes amazing artistic creations, sometimes a huge efforts in distribution, in marketing the films, in finding the right audience in other countries. But it's not always the case, and it's not always meant to be like that.
That also apply to.
Yeah, I think it's been covered. I still have one point, but maybe I'll use it for your last questions.
All right. My last question will actually link to what Marc was just saying, to the factors that do help to make films circulate. And we've seen that clearly the theatrical success of a film helps the availability of that film on VOD platforms. And there's one other really interesting figure that I recently learned on our other conference 2 days ago from Laurent Dutoit, a Swiss distributor, Agora Films. Because as some of you may know, in Switzerland, I think it's the only country in Europe where at least transactional VOD services are obliged to communicate also the consumption figures. And he shared with us that in the TVOD catalogs in Switzerland, 20% of the films, 20% of the catalog were films that were theatrically released, and those 20% accounted for 80% of the views. So in terms of consumption, possibly that link between theatrical and VOD success, I'm very happy to have Juan who can actually say something, because these are the only figures that I've actually heard so far, because these figures, unfortunately, in terms of consumption, are not available to the general public. So using this, apart from theatrical, my question basically to all of you, in your experience, in your daily business, what factors do help to make European films circulate successfully?
If I can start from our experience, I think that there is not a maximum that, yes, it can help for sure, but we have from our experience, like both sides. For example, last year in filming, the most watched films of our platform, they were VOD direct releases. They were titles like, for example, The Assistant. It was potentially and mainly for a key factor that was for the topic of the Me Too, for example, that it's a wonderful movie, of course, but then we had Boiling Point, that we have the talent of Stephen Graham. Stephen Graham, we have a lot of series like The Virtues also in the platform that work really great, and he's a wonderful actor. So, and it's like a unique shot title that it's very, very special title. Or for example, After Love. After Love is a movie that just recently won it was in the BAFTA nominations, and we acquired it like a year and a half or 2 years after that was already in the circuit, in the European circuit, and it's a very tender, sensitive, and wonderful movie. So those three were the most watched films of filming. It's important to say also that in those titles that we directly release them in VOD platform, we invest the same or even more budget as we can spend in a film that we released it in cinema. We for example, we did an advertising big canvas in the main key locations of Barcelona and Madrid with this title. So I think that it's very important to believe in the content that you have, depending on the window that they have been. In the other hand, we have also the examples of two titles like Annette and Drive My Car, that they are also handled by us in Spain, thanks with Elastica Films. Both of them, they came from cinemas, and they have worked also really well. And the cinemas, they did a really good job for this. But with the cinemas, at least in the case of Spain, there is like a key problem, that is the window problem. With Annette, we had to respect a 4-month window. With Drive My Car, we achieved to have just 2 months window. Here is a problem, because when you release a film and you have to wait for 4 months, okay, maybe the film has worked great in the theaters, but 2 months after or 1 month and a half after, the film, they are not speaking more about the film. And when it comes to the platform, 4 months after, it's like the feeling of the audience is that it's not a novelty anymore. Okay, now I can watch it here, but it's not like a new release for me, you know? So I think that this is bad for the movie. And Annette worked well in filming. It worked well and it was a success. But we have the feeling that maybe if it had a 2 months window instead of a 4 months window, it would be great. In the case of Drive My Car, the cinemas were a key. The Oscars, you know, okay, but the cinemas and his success in cinemas and how the people started to talk about the movie once it was in cinemas, it helped a lot to have it potentially release, to have a potential release in the platform also. So I think that, again, depending on the movie, depending on the situation, so it's not a general rule. I think that there is not a maximum. Okay, if it's in cinema, it's going to work better, or if it goes directly to a VOD platform, it's going to work better, depending on the case and the situation of the country, for sure.
Before I give the floor to Sabine, one more thing. In one conversation, you mentioned subtitles as a factor. Perhaps you would just like to briefly remark on that.
Yeah, the thing of subtitles is something that it's one of the main problems that we have with our audience. No? It's the main complaint that we have in our social media and with the contact that we are talking about European cinema. We are in Spain. In Spain, there are a lot of Spanish people, but there are also a lot of German people, a lot of French people. And with most of the titles that we have in our platform, we don't have the right to use the English subtitle. If the film hasn't got a world deal, you can't use the English subtitle. This comes from like 10, 15 years ago when it was the home video market. That with the home video market, it was illegal not to have the license of the English subtitling, because if you, okay, I edit a DVD or a Blu-ray, I have the English subtitles, so I am in Spain, but I can sell it through internet in other countries. So this was like a protection measure, that it has all the logical. But right now, that we are with the geo-blocking, that we are just licensing to one country with geo-blocking, not to have the possibility of offering my content with an English subtitling, for me, it's like, for us, it's like totally logical. But imagine for the audience that they don't know anything about the market, is how is it possible? I want to watch this movie, maybe I am French, I want to, or I am English and I want to watch, or without subtitles, or with English subtitles, and I can't. How do you explain to this audience that you can use it? So this is a thing that we have urgently to change, because this is accessibility. And this is what we are talking about here in general. So this is one thing that it's an urgent matter to change it. Yeah, totally.
Thank you. Sabine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when I'm selling a program, I'm pitching differently if I'm talking to Mark, or if I'm talking to an Italian, or if I'm talking to an American. So I think that what will help really the circulation of European film movies is really to trust all the local distributors or platform that will really adapt what I'm selling them to their local audience. Even though we have successful story of movies that have been traveling all around the place, we also have stories of movies that have been so successful in theater in certain countries because the distributor made an incredible work. Whether it was a passion project, whether it was a timing, whatever reason, those films will live forever. I represent a catalog of 1,000 titles. Out of them, I still work on titles which were produced in the 30s. So the theatrical release, trusting a distributor to make this film live for long in a territory, I think is really essential.
I guess you confirm?
Yeah, and I think also to your question about it's always funny how numbers seem to always come up with the 80-20 rule that you just mentioned before. And to your point about curation, the platforms, if we look at the way our films get consumed on the platform, you always have the top bit on a platform, the carousel or however they call it, and you have the top 10. And it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that people will tend to gravitate towards what's in the top 10. So, sometimes we're lucky we have one that is in there, The Father or whatever, but for the other titles, and that's the big majority of European titles, curation is key. And curation on the platform and curation with the distributor. And I have to say, the Netherlands is already what I call a post-window market, in the sense that we have windows to define moments, but what happens within the moments is something that we need to figure out. So almost each release has to find a special way, a special strategy, which includes theatrical and then premium VOD, TVOD, SVOD, and all that stuff. And final point is that as much as we work hard to make a film work in the cinemas, we also work in partnership to co-invest with the platforms to make sure that our titles get also the attention they need. Because the long tail, and that that thing that people think that because it's there, people will watch it, that doesn't work. There's always an exception, but it doesn't work. You need to invest in curation, you need to invest in money, marketing spend, and also have the people behind it that have the passion for the film to make sure that it gets a slightly better result. So I think that's crucial. Please.
Just a statistic that I discovered earlier this year. It was an analysis on the consumption of the title on the platforms. There is a huge choice. It's like 50,000 titles. Over a month, guess what is the percentage of titles that have been seen once? I think 10? Yeah? Anyone else? So maybe, Christine, you're pessimistic. It was 15%. Yeah, it's only 15% of the titles that are watched at least once. So twice, I don't know. Maybe it's 5%. So marketing, inspiring the audience, that's really critical. You cannot just put titles on a platform. It doesn't work.
So I guess if I have to wrap up the first panel, Mathilde?
Yeah, I think you're making a very good point, and beyond circulation, it's also questions of discoverability, because we also have an increased number of VOD service, and films can be on one and not on the other, and films can be available not necessarily on the top 3 biggest platforms in a country, and we know that people are not going to subscribe endlessly to SVOD, for instance. They're going to have 1, 2, potentially 3, and then they're going to go to other services afterwards. So discoverability is very important, and because as your study shows, there are more European films available across in other countries. So they are there, but we need to find them. So I think there's also an education point that needs to be done. I mean, there are tools available which we can strengthen and develop, and the observatory is one, for instance, and we can strengthen the education for the people to go on those tools and say, okay, this is where the film is available, this is how I can access it. So that's quite interesting. I think prominence and curation is also very important to make sure that the films that we want to promote are there, but we're coming back again to the point of investment in a country to develop a market, to develop a domain, and that's why the territoriality is extremely important, because you can't just release it and hope that people are going to watch it and hope you're going to recover your the cost of the film. You have to make an investment, which then needs to be recouped. So it's an entire process. And maybe if I just want to add one point, which I'm sure is very obvious to the entire room, but why is it also so important that we also get, from a producer point of view, when we have our films distributed and you have the investments and we get some revenues out of it, is that it helps us invest in other projects, because as a producer we have to invest in a very high number of projects to have one come out of the production and become a final film, which then we have to have distributed. So it's an entire cycle. It's important to watch it from the point of view of one movie, because you have to develop that audience. But from a producer's point of view, we have the entire long-term ecosystem to take into consideration, because the success on one film in a certain number of territories is exactly what's going to help us make the next one. And maybe one last point you mentioned, and you mentioned it, is transparency. It is very important for us to understand what the audience wants. And the more films are being on VOD, the more difficult it is for us to know what people want. And without that transparency, we are in the dark, especially when, in some cases, VOD platforms are also producers. When you're an independent producer, you don't have access to that information, so you also have a different level playing field, which I think is interesting to look at. So more transparency would also be very helpful for circulation, because it helps us understand what people like.
That's perhaps a wonderful segue to the second part of the conference, which is more on policy. And I would like to thank the panelists and perhaps wrap up briefly in just word curation seems to be one of the main factors to make films circulate. And I'm happy to introduce to you now Maya Capello, who will introduce you to the second part.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the policy panel. We will spend 45 minutes together, and we will look into the European regulatory toolbox that has been put in place over the past years. We're going to see what worked best, where there is possibly some room for improvement, if there is something missing. And we will do that not only with the help of our distinguished panelists, but with a short introduction from the observatory, with Sophie Vallée, Senior Legal Analyst of the Observatory, presenting the situation at stake. We will then have a chat with Giuseppe Abamonte, Director Media Policy at DG Connected European Commission. And then, as was mentioned at the beginning, we will be joined also by Edith Sepp from the EFAD and Amélie Lénard from Arte, who will integrate our panel. But now please welcome Sophie Vallée for this introduction to the secrets of European regulation to promote availability and circulation of European films.
Good morning, everyone. In December 2020, an action plan was launched at European level to support the recovery and the transformation of the audiovisual sector, which was particularly hit by the COVID crisis and which is seen as essential for cultural diversity. Among the action foreseen, one action aimed at ensuring a broader availability of audiovisual content across the EU. However, this is not really a new objective, as increasing the circulation of European works has also been an objective of the audiovisual policy at European level for several years now. I will now present you the legal toolbox. When we talk about the circulation of works, three types of intervention come into play from a legal and policy point of view. First, the legal rules, and here the rules have been changed in recent years at European level. Secondly, the business models and industry practices, and I refer here to the windows or media chronology. Finally, public funding plays also an important role, and here too new priorities have been set at European level. But let's start first with the regulatory framework. One of the objectives of the global EU strategy for a digital single market is to ensure cross-border distribution of works, and this has been regulated through different measures. First, regulations. Two regulations which are directly applicable in the member states. A first one in 2017 aimed at improving cross-border access to work by allowing subscribers to pay services to access their favorite films when they are on holiday or traveling in another member state. The second regulation on geo-blocking in 2018 excluded audiovisual services, including cinematographic works, and it aimed at avoiding discrimination based on geolocalization of customers. 1 year later, in 2019, a directive was adopted, which had to be implemented in the member states, which aimed to enhance the cross-border access to TV and radio programs. It did so by facilitating the rights licensing for broadcasters in case of simultaneous and catch-up online transmission of certain programs, and for retransmission operator of TV and radio programs on closed networks. The second pillar of regulatory reforms took place in 2018, and it concerned the promotion of European works on video on-demand services. It was achieved through the revision of the Audiovisual Media Services Directive. According to a new Article 13 in this directive, video on-demand services must now include 30% of European works in their catalogue. They must also ensure prominence of these works, which has been mentioned in the first panel, which means they need to facilitate the access to these works. It can be through banners or search tools or a specific reference in the homepage of the service. In addition, the member states can extend the financial obligations to ensure that streaming services established outside of their territory and targeting the national audience can contribute to the financing of production. This can be through rights acquisition, direct investment in content, or even levies in film funds. And so far, about 12 countries have taken this possibility at European level. The third pillar of the regulatory reform was also mentioned in the first panel. It concerns creators themselves. In April 2019, the European Union reviewed the rules to adapt them to the digital single market. And among the novelties, a new directive introduced new measures to facilitate the licensing of works of rights to video-on-demand platforms. In particular, this included a new negotiation mechanisms to facilitate the rights licensing on VOD platforms, new transparency obligation towards rights holders, contract adjustment mechanisms to renegotiate licensing when the remuneration are too low compared to the exploitation revenues, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Another important aspect when it comes to circulation relates to the so-called windows of exploitation or release windows, and this is set mostly sometimes in the law, but mostly in industry agreements. So under these terms of windows, we refer to the holdback periods before a work can be released in each of the different segments of the market, and it usually starts with the cinema theaters and ends with the free TV. So if we look at the European level, we can see that there is a very diverse landscape in terms of windows in Europe. There is a diversity first in the way these are fixed. For example, in some countries it is based on legal provision, in other countries it's based on industry negotiations, sometimes on both, and in some countries it's a rule set by the film fund to give some support to films. We can see also that there is a great level of diversity in terms of the duration of these windows in Europe. It can go from 4 to 36 months in France, but also 3 to 6 months, 10 to 105 days, and so on. So the third pillar of intervention in the toolbox is the funding. Public funding is, of course, very important, and here two new priorities have been set at European level. These priorities of the Creative Europe program for 2021-2027 have focused on more cross-border circulation through 4 different clusters. First, more content creation, more cross-border cooperation between companies, reaching wider audiences, and policy and awareness. And this has materialized through a range of different supports that you probably know very well. So what next? It appears that the toolbox is well supplied. It ranges from measures to offer greater variety of content to consumers, measures to protect creators, to facilitate rights licensing by companies, and also support. The question is now, what is left to be invented to support circulation? The European Commission and the industry have been reflecting on this question over the last few months, and I will now hand over the mic to Maya Capello, the European Commission, and the panel to express their views and experience in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Sophie Vallée. I think we got a clear idea of the variety of instruments that have been put in place. Well, I would say during the past 5 years, it's been extremely dynamic. And the driver behind this, the European Commission. So I'm very pleased to ask you to welcome Giuseppe Bamonte up to the stage, Media Director for Media and Policy at DG Connect. So I will have the pleasure of having a little chat in front of a pool that we thought that instead of a fireside, a pool would be more fit for the purposes here in Cannes. So join me, take a sun chair, and we will dive you into the secrets of, yeah, there is no table. Yes, please, a microphone would be helpful. Thank you. So, dear Giuseppe, we saw from the previous presentation, indeed, that the regulatory activity has been intense. You've been working without any break, I guess, since 2017 up to today. And in December 2020, there was also this important Media and Audiovisual Action Plan that was presented. Among the priorities, there was, in particular, to work on the availability and the access to works across Europe. So I would like to ask you, what was the idea behind this plan, and how did you start working on this?
Right. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you in flesh and bones after so many years. The ideas are those which were mentioned by the previous speakers. So the Media Action Plan rested on 3 strategic objectives. So one was to support the sector and help the sector recover. There were certain industries, in particular the cinema industries, which were, very badly hit by the pandemic. The second one was to create a framework which would enable the transformation of the sector, and so to gain a greater competitive edge globally. And the third one was the objective that you were referring to, and which is the main theme of this conference, which is a consumer empowerment objective by ensuring greater circulation and access across border to European works. Now, as regards the first 2 objectives, so what we did is to step up the support. So, for example, there is an action which is called Europa Cinemas under the media program. whereby we give 15 millions basically to the cinemas, which are suffering badly. We spent over the last 2 years more than 30 millions in projects aimed at mainstreaming technologies such as VR, for example, blockchain, in the production and distribution of films. There is a call now for 8 millions in the pipeline, which is an innovation call. And then something which is extremely important from a funding viewpoint is this Media Invest project, which has just been launched and which aims, it's an equity investment fund, which will be managed by the European Investment Fund. And the aim is to invest in fonds propres, so in equity, both in media companies, but also in productions. So also in productions, and of course, I mean, it's risk capital, so it's something that will be very much market-driven, and the idea is to invest in productions which are successful and which circulate well across the European Union and beyond. So then finally, if you allow me, on the circulation, we had the dialogue, the stakeholder dialogues on circulation and access to content, which has been paused but is still ongoing.
And this leads me to what I actually had in mind, because of course we have read about the stakeholders dialogue, which started last November. There were some meetings, I understand, intense exchanges between the European Commission and various stakeholders from the industry. So now, can you maybe take us a little bit behind the scenes and let us know what happened there?
Right. Well, there were a few meetings, so we engaged the industry to come up with some solutions in order to increase the number of diversity of audiovisual works available online across the European Union. So that is the circulation part. The other objective of the dialogue is to improve consumers' access to content across the member states. Now, there were a number of ideas which emerged, more or less concrete ideas, which emerged during the dialogues. So something which is very important is the exploitation of back catalog films. For example, producers, they seem to be keen to produce, to exploit all films when they get the rights back. And there is an idea which needs to be encouraged, also because there is a consumer appetite for older films. Another idea which was discussed is a platform. So the creation of a common online platform where films to varying extents would be made available on a European scale. So there was an idea, for example, which came from representatives of consumers to set up a non-profit transactional VOD platforms where publicly funded works, so audiovisual works, would be made available in territories where they're not present, because there is no license. So there is an interesting idea, but the problem is that this requires money, and so without money we don't go anywhere. And it would require public funding, and it would also require some important changes to the existing public funding schemes, which do not provide for this particular possibility. So there is the situation. Now, on access, I must say the outcome of the dialogue so far it's been a little bit disappointing. And so we are still where we were 6 years ago, or 10 years ago. And now basically we will invite the stakeholders to come back after the summer with some concrete ideas to try and improve on the situation. So the ball shortly will be, the ball now is in our court, but shortly will be in the court of the stakeholders.
Well, very well. So maybe we can even try now to see if we get some ideas.
Yes.
I understand the issue is not very much availability of the works. I mean, the catalogs are full. We have seen from the previous presentations that indeed there is a remarkable amount of films. The first panel discussion showed that maybe not all works are fit for traveling. But do you see a way forward for involving the industry on a talk on this, or is it in the making? Anything to anticipate?
Well, something which is happening is that your recent report has been used to say, well, you know, why we hold in the dialogue if there is no problem in circulation. But it is not entirely true. So I don't think that the objective of the dialogue and the findings in your report are at odds. So there is no tension between the two. Because the study basically compares the availability of films over a period of 25 years. So to show there has been an exponential increase in consumers' choice, especially since the development of VOD platforms. Which is fine. I mean, we are not contesting that. But still, there are considerable difference in the offerings of audiovisual content across the European Union. So you can't compare, for example, the offering in France with the offering in Romania or even in Italy. So France is much, consumers in France are much better off than Italian or Romanian or Bulgarian consumers, for example, in terms of choice and availability. Well, you spoke about the correlation also between theatrical distribution and VOD distribution, which is fine, but something which is very important is that the access issue is not addressed in the report. And we would like basically to do two things now in the follow-up to the dialogue. First, to find ways, so collaborative ways, so I don't know, more co-productions, more joint ventures, a better distribution strategy to tap the untapped potential of the internal market, so to have a better integrated internal market, and then also to keep exploring possibilities to make access easier for consumers across board.
This sounds extremely interesting, so thank you for these anticipations. We will hear more after the summer. So you are free to go to another pool or to follow our panel from the floor.
I will follow the panel. Thank you very much.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now I would like to invite two further speakers to join the floor, and that is Edith Sepp, CEO of the Estonian Film Institute and Vice President of the EFAD. Welcome, Edith. And Amélie Lénard, she is Director for European Development at Arte. Welcome to you as well, Amélie. Please welcome them warmly. I think I will... So I see you better, and I don't have to give my shoulders to the audience. So we have quite many elements now that we have seen, regulatory tools, etc. I would like to start with a success story. Arte is well known, is a very special public service broadcaster in the middle of Europe. And of course, not everything can be replicated by other players, but let us dream a moment. Bring us to your world, to your magic world of Arte, and what is there, in your view, that can maybe be also be done by others to promote circulation and access to works?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I will mention one of our success stories, which is the Arte Kino Film Festival. It's an online film festival which started about 6 years ago, which takes place in December each year, and which gives access to a selection of films by young female and male filmmakers, European filmmakers. It's 10 to 12 films for months, made available in several languages, And it's a great opportunity for those films which don't circulate that much throughout Europe to reach an audience outside of their country of production, even for some co-production outside of their country of co-production, and find an audience online. And some of the success story include some of the films which have been further to an exhibition through the Arte Kino Film Festival, which have been sold to other countries and have circulated in further festival throughout Europe. So it's a way to really enhance the circulation of European works and European young cinema.
Thank you, and also for putting the finger on what is important. I mean, works are produced because they should be seen. If there is no audience to watch the films, then why would the films be produced? So I think this is indeed an important point of view, the viewer's perspective. So this requires, of course, that the works are known and promoted. And here I come to the sore side, which is money. And the question is, of course, well, I look at you, Edith, because you represent imaginatively the money bag of the film fund. So I was wondering, once a film has been produced, let's now not use the example of the French comedies that maybe don't have success in Scandinavia, but Scandinavian noir is very popular elsewhere. So how can this appetite be triggered? And money-wise, how do we avoid that production budgets have to be eaten up in order to promote films, which is an activity on its own? So how are the priorities of the film funds in this regard to make films travel more?
Yes, hello from my side. And in efforts, we have been put together the vision for 2030. And one thing, what was quite a radical idea, what we discussed there, and it's just between us, the funders, is that perhaps we should really think that half of the production budget should really go to the promotion. It is a little bit too much. People are saying that you're free in your choices and you can do anything what you want with the budget and just take the money, but usually there's not enough money. So, the producers are not very happy if we are going to say that, yes, we actually take it from the production line of budget. So, but the idea is that we don't perhaps put enough money also. We don't help them enough, from the film fund side to be on this market. And especially when you mention the smaller, or let's say the art house films, then yes, the one thing what we talk here is the prominence, and we have to make them more visible, and it's not about accessibility. But it's also that, don't you think, it's more like a question that we are starting to lose the connection with our audience also, that the younger audience who is coming, they don't really know our heritage film. They don't have the knowledge what kind of films we do and why we do the films the way we do. And that's why they don't want to really perhaps quite enthusiastically watch all the art house films. Because I think nationality is one thing what we talk about, but we talk about the communities more these days, that 18 years old Estonians are more connected to the 18 years old French. But if the 18 years old French don't know anything about the history of Estonia, for example, and this is just a random example here, then it's very hard for them to understand why we are doing the films like we are doing. And the last point I would like to make, that let's talk about Alba Edison, who invented the first camera. By the way, the first camera was made not to do the art house films or any kind of films. It was to record the nature and show it in the classroom. So he wanted to bring the the real life into the classroom. And we have sort of lost the connection what the camera or what the audiovisual image can do to the children. And I think we have to recreate this connection. Long enough, yes? A little bit too much time?
No, it's perfect. And especially because you pointed out an very important element, the creation of the appetite, how this can be stimulated. Because here we have works are produced, fine, many. Are they available? Yes, the catalogs are quite full. Do people know they are there? Do they want to see them? Is there an interest in these works? And here, well, here comes the important functions of the distributors who know the local audiences, who know what could travel best. But we have seen that, and that is a bit the center of the conference today. What about those works that are not available because they are not sold, they are not distributed? What if there is an appetite because, I don't know, via social media you hear others talk about a film, you would like to see them. So how can a cross-border appetite triggered by a TikTok video, or just to use the example of the youngsters, be satisfied? I would like to hear from Sabine Chemali and Mark Smith on this, to have the perspective of the distributors and the sales agents, to see what is your driver in order to make sure that works reach their audiences across the borders. Sabine, you want to start?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm here for that reason. I mean, not here on this stage, but here in Cannes, to make sure that I have a couple of movies that Mark needs to give me an answer on, but that's my job all day long. I mean, you know, to find a distributor, to make sure that the consumer in Belgium and in Italy and all around Europe will see the movies. And if Mark decides not to take the movie, or if or another distributor, sorry to to put the pressure on you, Mark. You know, then I will also, at the same time nowadays, by the way, talk to a platform or talk to the TV channels. I'm going to talk to all the stakeholders in every territories. Now, to address the single consumer who needs to see a movie because maybe his brother or sister who is living outside the country or who is on TikTok, that's a challenge, because we have a model made through curation and not through individual, you know, picking. So until we can do B2C ourselves, maybe that's the model. I mean, I think that the studios are also thinking about that, or they went through the SVOD system. But there was a time where we were thinking that the studios would create their own website where they could address individual consumer around the world. This is not the model that has been chosen, it's SVOD, but that's a challenge.
Yeah, no, I guess, and it's an interesting model in any case, so maybe to be revitalized, who knows?
Maybe now that technology enables a lot of things, that could be.
Exactly. And Mark, what's your view? When you distribute, you mentioned in the previous panel that, well, already between Belgium and Netherlands, you don't really see big success stories flow, but if there is an appetite, how can the viewers, because that's the point of view that we should not forget. I mean, no, in the end, the films should reach their audiences. What would be your recipe? Is there a way forward, a trick that can be maybe used in order to reach audiences more easily, or what's your strategy?
I think if you look at, for example, the geo-blocking rule and the 30% rule, that has benefited European films a lot in recent years, because if you look at the deals we can do with HBO, with Amazon, or the local platforms, you could argue that TVOD and SVOD and the way the rules have been set up in Europe have really increased substantially the number of films that are made available. And now I'm talking from my perspective, but it's true for the other distributors. So that's one thing that has, especially in the last 5 years, there's been, you know, and we talk about the pandemic all the time, but it started before, but it's accelerated. So I think that the availability and also the monetization of these films, you know, has increased with the platforms. So that's also something that will benefit the producers and the rights owner, because there's also royalties coming back to it. We also acquire a lot of library content, and we buy old films. And the old films we have, you know, for example, both the Almodovar catalog from TF1, we have Wong Kar-wai, that's not European, I get that. But, you know, a lot of our auteurs, we buy the back catalog, and we are able to bring that library catalog also with our new films, you know. And what Mr. Abamonte was saying about, you know, maybe having a platform for titles that are not sold or are old or whatever, that's you know, it's almost a utility that you have, or I always, when I talk about that, I always think of a Wikipedia of, you know, where the films would be. That's, I think, a very strong idea. The issue sometimes with platforms like that is if you don't have the, you know, the titles that pull the audience to it, which are the new titles, it's difficult to maintain interest for the titles, you know, because the new feeds also with the old library titles, you know. But maybe there is scope as a final point, maybe for that circulation, is also to use a platform such as the one that was mentioned, that could also be a utility that would be provided to existing telcos or platforms, so that they can also, almost like a wholesale service, where you can access these older titles.
How old is old?
It's very young.
Okay. So 2 years, for example?
Yeah, you know, like when, you know, and obviously I talk about the business model that we have. You know, Netflix has another business model. They would acquire the films worldwide, and that's another story, and it's available on the platform worldwide. But as far as, you know, most European films and our business model is the first year or two is new, and we manage exclusivity and premiumness in a way. So that's when, you know, it's super important also with the geo-blocking rule, is to be able to then, in order to protect and secure the investment you've made in the rights and in the marketing campaign, is to be able to benefit from the pay TV deals, from all the SVOD deals we have, you know, because our revenues are spread. It's a bit more theatrical, like 60-40 theatrical in the other windows, and that's super important. So to your question, new is certainly the first year, but the first two is probably the answer.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very interesting. That, you see, you got already an idea. That's not bad. Amelie, I see you're active with the mic. Maybe you wanted to intervene?
I just wanted to go back to the question of reaching a younger audience. Of course, it's also a challenge as a broadcaster, and with the Arte Kino Festival, which I mentioned earlier, one of the way we found to do that was to try to interact directly with this younger audience, and that's why we formed and we created a young audience jury and a young audience award through. And to do that, we made a pan-European campaign to select the jury, and it was a way to interact with the audience. And what we do as well is that the festival offers, as I said, recent art house films, but in addition we have a monthly offering of art house film, and now we also have heritage films. So it's also a way to show a recent films next to an older film, and try to bring the audience to both those aspects of the offering.
Another nice idea. That sounds great. And I had Joan, Sala first, and then Edith, and yeah. I guess you wanted to jump on the festival part.
No, totally about the young audience part. That I think that one of the key problems that we have, and one of the key goals that we have, and I totally agree with Amélie. What we are doing in filming also, that we also have our own festival, the Atlantia Mallorca Film Festival. It was created as just as online festival, and we hybridated to the physical part, you know. And right now, for example, this year that is going to be the 12th edition, it happens in the platform, but also in Palma, Mallorca, during a week. It's the first year that we are having an official competition section. This official competition section is totally focused to gain this young audience. It's a section that is focused, it's not a mandatory, the premiere, but it's mandatory to be this kind of titles that can in some way empathize with the issues, with the matters, with the language of the young audience. And I think that what is very important is what we have to do first is to understand them, to know them very well, so that we can reach them. You know, for example, me in my case, in my personal case, I think that when I go to a music festival, for example in Barcelona, such as Sonar Festival or Primavera Sound, I see that they are achieving this, and in cinema it's not happening this. When I go to Sonar, the electronic music that is right now, it's very different of the electronic music that was like 7 years or 8 years ago. I go to the Sonar, to the Sonar Day, and it's like trap, reggaeton. It's kind of electronic music that I can't understand it. I don't like it a lot. But then I see around, and it's full of young people dancing this music.
So you need to speak their language.
That's the thing. The same happens with Primavera Sound. And when we go to festivals around Spain, okay, the theaters can be full, but if you see the audience, it's like they are 30 up or 40 up, you know. And what we have to do this year, it's like in the official competition, there are these kind of generational titles, but what we did is, it's going to be a jury of 5 people. The official jury is going to be 5 people. 3 of them, they are going to be renowned figures of the Spanish cinema, but there are going to be 2 more that they are going to be young students. One a cinema student and another one that is not even a cinema student. And it's going to be delivering with them at the same level as official juror. Because I think what is important is to hear them. What do they have to say? What do they see in the films? What they like about the films, and what do they don't like about the film? So let's first understand them. Let's first see how is their language, to then have our tools and our keys in order to reach them. And in that way, initiatives like film festivals, it's key things. In our film festival in Mallorca, the thing that's why we had it physically. In Mallorca, most of the screenings are free. They not pay.
That helps, of course, as well. I will need to stop you there because otherwise we don't manage to get Edith Sepp on board. But I think you pointed again the finger on a very important thing. Amélie, the young people, the language issue, and you mentioned Lumière in the classroom. So maybe we are going back to the origins, Edith.
Actually, I mentioned Edison, but...
Sorry, Edison.
But one of them, yes, one of them.
One of the old chaps.
Back to the classroom, yes. No, definitely, yes, the younger audience. It has to, we have to concentrate on younger audience, but the other key word, what we have not mentioned here, is also the diversity. You know, the diverse portfolios what we have, and so many films what we have available. So we do have Europa Cinemas, this kind of label for the cinemas. You know, perhaps we could have, and I think that it's not going to push away the younger audience. Maybe we can have also for the VOD platforms the kind of label, yes, like European diverse films or something like this, because Europa Cinema label never pushed away the audience from the cinemas, and we go to the cinema today, and it makes us proud that if it's part of the Europa Cinema chain, so perhaps, you know, also to make these platforms more appreciated and valued. You know, we could have some level for them to put on the website and bring them out. This is one of the ideas what we have been talking about. Just if they go over the 30%, for example, you know, their
so it's a labeling solution. So this is for you, basically, yes. That attract. Yeah.
And the other thing is to tackle the, you know, maybe talk to the Google. You know, how the search engine could really find much easier the diverse films what we have available. You know, not to let the audiences to find the films themselves, but you know, make them or direct them to the right direction in our terms to find the diverse and different art house films.
So here you bring in another actor, that is the partnering, how to engage with different interlocutors. And this brings me to Mathilde Fiquet from the Producers Association, CEPI. And I was wondering, partnering is also, of course, important from your perspective, I guess. Festivals, they play an important role. We saw from the data of the observatory that notably, co-productions are those who travel best in terms of work. So you have a big responsibility because you are at the beginning. So you set a bit the tone, don't you?
Well, yeah, partnering is extremely important. It really helps working with other partners in other countries, making a film broader, also making it easy to find financial supports, and also to increase that creativity and that diversity that we were talking about. Festivals are a very important place for producers as well, where they can meet and you have pitching sessions and you can find those partners. What we see is that we have that very changing environment, and what we've seen in the world of producers is that we have bigger and bigger producing companies. But what I find very interesting is that I also have been able to talk to producers who tells me, well, in order to be able to carry on producing the films that we want, the way where we want it, without necessarily having a large company to work with, is that they're also developing networks of co-producers with producers in other countries, which they have a trusted relation, and they can have that partnership, and they know they can work together and have those great films. So we do see that increase in co-production, which I find extremely interesting for circulation, for availability, but also for the quality of content, for making those European films that we like. So I think it's very interesting, and it's definitely a trend, which I think needs to be supported, because it also allows for a different type of content.
Absolutely. That leads me to make a step back and to alert the audience that we will soon open a Q&A session. So please start thinking about possible questions. I will take them here from the floor. Martin will take them from the sky. So we will have both from online and in the room the interaction. So to let you think, I will do a last round on going back to the regulatory toolbox. Is there anything you saw was missing there? Where can we draw the balance between regulatory instruments and industry-led initiatives? This is a very fine balance, because of course too much regulation, I guess nobody loves, but at the same time, industry-led initiatives, they must be somehow harmonized to work in an internal market. So who would like to break the ice on this? Mark, for example?
Yep. Well, I think there were quite a few things that were mentioned today that I think will be important. I think what was mentioned about the European Investment Bank and the equity funding, I think is quite important for, like companies in distribution, in production, and also the local platform to be able to access capital. I think that's probably good, and it should be also done in conjunction with other funds, so that the pot can be bigger. So I think that's one good initiative. A second point that was mentioned is transparency. I think it would be good for the industry if the platform, both on TVOD and SVOD level, would share more information. And I know that's kind of taboo. They say we'll never do it or whatever.
It's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah, but things can always change. And I think now with the fierce competition, it's a fairly mature market, SVOD and VOD in many countries. With the fierce competition, there may be more pressure also for some platform to do advertising business models. And if you do advertising, there's a chance you need to share information with advertisers. So who knows? Maybe. And I think it'd be healthy for the industry to not only look at theatrical numbers, which are just a portion of the cake, So I think that's an interesting one. And I think probably the platforms, the European platforms, need also to be supported to be more professional, more have more marketing resources, and that's one thing which is important. And obviously the media plan helps us a lot, so we'll keep that.
Sounds good.
Adding a point what Mark says, and I think that I totally agree, and it's a key thing for me. It's also to back up the innovation. It's very important to back up with the collaboration, but in order to face this fierce competition that they are with the big players, I think that it's very important to back up with innovation. In our case, for example, as I say, it's like from the side of filming, it's like we have broken the fourth wall. We are a VOD platform, but we have broken this wall, and right now we are distributors. We have our own film festival. We are also co-productors, and we are here in Cannes acquiring also titles in all rights mode. So I think that this is another way to have also relevant quality content, to have this European relevant and quality content in these kinds of channels. And I think that it's very important to also to back up this the innovation facet, the innovation dimension,
So are you saying let's produce less but more quality? Because that's also a question that is in the air. Is there too much?
Let's have the tool needed, and let's think which could be those tools in order to be more accurate in this production mode. And to have these tools, we have to test things. We have to try things. And let's help to try things. And maybe some things that we try, they don't work a lot. They won't work at all. So, but we learn from this. And the next step, for sure, that will be a better step and a more accurate step, you know, and I think that it's very
So
important.
more focused funding.
And let's be quite more risky. Let's be bold, because it's the thing. For me, the most potential way of facing this fierce and global competition and rivalry that we have. Totally.
Yeah, I think the theatrical market is changing a lot because the American movies are going to be a scarcity of American movies because the studios will put them on their platform. So I think there is a great opportunity for European movies. And the scheme that Europe has developed is fantastic to support the distributor, the sales agent. We have never had, I mean, the French sales company, we have 40 French companies. They have never had so many different European movies from all nationalities. So it's really fantastic. Circulation is working thanks to that as well. And I think that there is a room for European cinema, for art house and bigger projects. And maybe on the selective side, I know that there is a cap for the budget above 15 million euros, for example. They are not qualifying for selective. Maybe they should, because we need bigger projects to take the place of those American, oh, thank you, and the American movies, and because we know that the audience will need mainstream movies, you know, easy movies. Let's grab these audiences that wants to see only Marvel movies, you know, and maybe the selective can help also independent distributor to raise their game and access these movies.
So more selective contribution than automatic shower funding. That's a bit.
Well, not exactly, but just maybe this cap is not necessary because anyway the funding for the films is capped. So you already have one. So maybe we shouldn't cap. If you are a 15 million movies, you cannot apply to the selective. So when I say you cannot, I mean the distributors cannot apply to it.
Well, Edith, this brings me a bit to you naturally.
Because of the financing. But yeah, I think it's more forward-looking, the new media program, and it's quite a lot of good things. Yes, I think, yes, we need these big blockbusters, European blockbusters, and we have been talking about it quite a bit. But never forget, you know, the smaller ones, you know, who are lagging behind also. So we have to have the just system, you know, so that everybody could access it, and we should never forget the smaller productions. We will never reach to this level. So just the equal treatment for all, I would say. But as you said, you know, some people can't even think or imagine over certain budget lines, so it's just not capable of doing it. But the other thing is, I also thought that it could be really interesting, like we mentioned here, that which film is already the heritage film, or when does the film become old? That we should really start to put more promotion money also to this kind of heritage film. You know, at the moment we always talk about the new films, and then circulation is already pretty good in some countries. But yes, how do you really promote without money the old heritage film? And we haven't really been doing that. So it's national film funds are taking the risk this time, but you know, perhaps the media program can also move closer to the heritage film promotion.
Are there maybe other institutions that could be involved? I don't know, cultural institutes at national level, or to spread a bit the burden? Maybe
I think in a national level, many countries are doing it anyway. But it's again, you know, you need to have a bigger thought, or you know, you need to have a bigger idea behind it. You know, doing it on a national level might not fly too high.
Mathilde, Amélie, you will leave to the two of you to close the round, and then I open up the floor.
So, on your question about the legal toolbox and what can we do for the future, I think that at legal level we need to look at what we're really trying to protect. What are we really trying to make sure that will continue in the next 5 or 10 years in the European film industry? And if it's about making sure that we continue to produce diverse content, making sure that some content produced from smaller producer can still make it because they are gems, they are successful, then we need to really look at what are the trends from the market and identify the areas where at legal level we can place safeguards so that those smaller companies, those smaller films can still be produced and be distributed, and we can still cater to find an audience for them. I think that's where I would put the importance of finding the right legal tool to make sure that that counterbalance to the market trend that we need to identify is there, and we can keep that diversity, and that's very important. And considering, and we've mentioned that today, how fast our market is evolving, how fast our market is changing, but also how much everything is so interconnected. And it is about one film, it is about one release, it is about one type of audience, but it is also about an entire ecosystem. So we need to probably get back together again, rethink, and also trying to anticipate. So probably a lot more thinking together to really anticipate with the funding, with what we're trying to protect, with the general trends, identify where we want to go.
So basically, biggest is not necessarily best. No, that's...
I think it has to just be room for both options. I think if we start to talk too much about the bigger projects, I think we always have to balance
with the smaller realities,
with the smaller and these medium size and blockbusters. So if we have money, we could have it all.
Yeah, that's true. Why choose if we can have it all? Amelie, to you the last, and then be prepared. There will be a microphone circulating.
Maybe to react quickly on what was said, I think indeed partnerships and networks are really key. For instance, to enhance visibility of heritage film, we've been partnering with the Association des Cinémathèques Européennes, but that's just an example. I think really partnership is crucial. And to answer to your question, Maya, I think as a public channel with a European mission funded through France and Germany, we have this special position that you mentioned earlier. Sorry, but the public funding, the European funding, we had to enhance the visibility of the European works through subtitles, and as you said as well, through communication and campaign targeted to the different country was really key to make that possible and to reach that pan-European audience that we reach.
But for this is costly as well. Do you imagine some special funding for?
No, sorry. We actually, because you mentioned the tool through the Europe Creative Media program, and we have this support that comes in addition to the public funding that we get. And this is a crucial addition that helps us reach the pan-European audience through subtitles, through communications, through a targeted editorialization of our online offering.
Which was what Joan also mentioned. So subtitling is indeed a key element for Make Works Travel. I would maybe ask Martin now to join me on stage to look at what's happening above the clouds for our online audience. And if there are questions, I see a hand raised. There will be a microphone circulating, COVID-free, wiped. And please introduce yourself and your affiliation so we know who you are.
Hi. Thank you for a great discussion. My name is Patrick. I represent a European VOD platform, niche platform small called Cult Picks. We specialize in older genre cult films, and we would love to show more European film on our platform. We're Swedish-based, by the way. But here's the issue. When we negotiate with American libraries, they're usually happy to do a revenue share. When we talk to European libraries, they typically insist on large upfront minimum guarantee payments, and they benchmark these payments at the kind of Netflix level and Amazon level, and we just can't afford to pay that kind of money because we're a small European operation. And then they tell us, and you can't have the film for Italy, Spain, and France because we don't have the rights, or we sold them exclusively to somebody else. So it's music to my ear when Sabina says that she's prepared to be flexible and trust local distributors. What I want to know is, are European rights libraries prepared to be flexible and trust distributors and do deals that are not one size fits all for American type of VOD platforms, but for European VOD platforms?
Thank you for this input. That was quite technical, and but our distributors here will certainly be able to address that.
Well, I mean, maybe we did it too early, but we did experiment to work on revenue shares with some platform like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was very frustrating. So maybe it was a try again, but it's true that when we're talking about heritage movies, you have to spend a lot of money to have the material compatible with the VOD platform. So you have to take that into consideration as well. But no, we've been trying, and I'm happy to. I think we never talked, so we can start a discussion, and we'll see. But you will have the problem of some territories not available. I don't think this is an issue, because others are available. So.
Well, the important thing is that the work is available, so that the viewers who want to watch them can.
And you can still talk to the local, the third parties who own the rights in Italy or in Spain.
Indeed. Any other arms? I see another one here. Again, please introduce yourself.
My name is Vincent. Lucas Under the Milky Way is the company. We work on aggregation of art house films worldwide. It's a difficult discussion we have here. We work on a market, if we talk about the VOD market, it's actually reshaped every several years by influence of a few big companies. They're not present here, but they reshape the market. We have this beautiful ecosystem in Europe, and I really think we should work on it to keep it that way and to improve it. But with these forces in the background, we have to take much stronger protection than we have at the moment. 4 years ago or something, Amazon decided, okay, we let all producers upload films for free, and we give them to our prime customers for free as a present. It's an insult to our branch. It's not possible to do something like that, but they did it. And it influences the whole market, just like that. And the problem is that they can do it. And you get, as a producer, 2 to 5 cents per hour if a prime customer from Amazon look at your film. And a lot of producers did that. So by one measure, they reshaped the whole European market in a few years. That's really a problem, you know, because we have to protect our small producers and being able to use the tools that we developed in a market like that. But if big companies like that, we all know what Netflix did. And the next big thing, you can read what Disney Plus just decided, that they are going to open advertisement-driven VOD. So that's the next thing. So then you get your films online for free for the whole European audience with commercials. Is that what we want? And it's going to happen in the next 5 years if we don't do anything. So that's why I very strongly support protection and keep working on our diversity, because that's what we do, bring European films around in Europe and everywhere. But good luck.
Thank you for this insight. Indeed, it's a delicate balance. I don't know if anyone wants to react to this, and then I see another hand over here.
I just, it made me think that indeed we are switching, well, many film funds, maybe smaller film funds quicker, but we are thinking at least if we support the promotion or distribution, then it's not going to be driven only by the cinemas. Not that we want to have some bad luck for the cinemas. We definitely support bringing out the films in the cinemas, but you know, we could really expand the support also to the online platforms and keep them more alive, and also bring it out perhaps even together, or you know, looking into the different options. So it's definitely in Estonia we are seriously thinking about not only supporting the cinema release but also the films on the online platform. Maybe this helps a bit, you know, I don't know.
So an inclusive approach. I saw Mathilde, you took the microphone. Did you want to add something?
Just to say that I echo your concerns, and I think that's exactly my point, which is we need to identify very clearly what we're trying to protect. What is our European added value in this market, and what are the tools to make sure that this added value is protected in face of that constantly evolving and changing market with those big powers. So this is really where we have to look, and I don't think we can expect that the market's going to regulate itself. That's where we need to have that conversation with the entire ecosystem together to really find what we are trying to protect and how we want to do it.
But would that be to create a European champion somehow, or working better together? That one is another question. The gentleman over there has the mic. Please introduce yourself, and then we look at the clouds. Yeah?
Thank you very much. It's very interesting, and interesting job we're having going forward. I'm a producer and a theatrical owner in Denmark. I think that we have to realize that we're walking on 2 legs. the national film that we are doing and maybe a European film that we are doing. We all remember the 60s and 70s of Romy Schneider and Alain Delon and so on, and big European movies that went all over. I think we are missing out on that now. A discussion like this could have been interesting if there were local theater operators here and maybe also local distributors who are close to the audience and realizes why we do not travel as much as we should. I agree with you that the American blockbuster is something that we have to compete against. When we go to the cinemas, you see 10 posters. We have to compete against those movies. In order to do so, I think that some of the money we are spending could go to a European Film Fund, where talent that wanted to produce European film with that target could go to Brussels or whatever, this is probably a political question, and apply for budget for a movie that had the purpose of reaching a European audience. When we go to Barcelona, CinemaCon, and watch the lineup of movies there, we see 5 studios representing lineups that should attract audiences, and they do. And then when the European lineup is rolling, everybody is falling asleep. And this is a problem. So we need to act. The Danish Film Institute, I think, have a good model. Half of the money goes for making art movies. The other half of the money goes to make audience movies. I think maybe Europe should think the same way. Let's win some festivals and let's win the audience. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, I see there is a certain consent. Well, we have European film funds. I don't know if from Eurimage there is a wish to make a little comment on that. I think you can get a microphone very easily. It's coming.
Thank you, Maya. And thank you very much for that intervention. Well, to some extent, I'm happy to provide some good news and something concrete in this conference, because there is a European Film Fund, which is called Eurimage, and of which I am the executive director. And we have 22 films in all of the different sections of Cannes. So we're doing something right, and I think that many of these films will reach their audiences and be available. Now, I think perhaps listening to your comments that you're thinking about a very audience-driven fund, you know, for films that will be really what we would hope would be European blockbusters. I cannot say that Eurimage is there. We're a culturally driven fund, but somehow or other, many of the films that we have supported I would consider, be considered European blockbusters. And I think of a Danish film, Another Round. So I think something's going right somewhere. There is always room for more help and more money, and for, you know, partnering together to make things work better in the interests of European film, and above all in the interests of reaching out to European audiences and bringing them particularly back into the theatres. But at least part of your wish is already there, I consider.
Thank you very much, Susan Newman, for
Can
this
I comment just very quickly? It's that 50% goes to the comedies or the audience films, 50% goes to the art house films in Denmark, but 50% of this 100% goes also to the audience building and film education. So they do deal with their young audience. It's a key issue that Denmark is definitely a front runner. So just to point out this 50%.
Thanks for this, Edith. Martin, is there something from the sky, or is there somebody else already in the room? I see the topic is successful. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, we have exhibition theaters in France, Spain and Morocco, and the distribution company as well. And according to your figures, European film represents 69% of the titles and represent 27 of admissions. So we cannot talk there is no diversity, but the trouble is there is no audience for this film. So as we know in France, we have trouble exporting film because they are not in English languages. So we export French film in Canada, Belgium, and Swiss, but it's difficult to export them abroad. So, some big titles do, but not all of them. I think the key issue is to set up at a European level a proper education of English language, English language for very young people as from 5 years old in all schools in Europe. That's the first point I want to raise. The second point is, as Mr. said, audience films are doing incomes that allow to produce art film. It's important to remember that art film, some of them are doing money, but most of them don't. So it's important not to avoid audience film.
Thank you very much for this comment. So I don't know if there is anybody who want to react. Maybe Martin, yes?
Perhaps I can link this to an otherwise really sunny sky, because we only have one question from the cloud. Well, the share of European films in terms of admissions has been really stable between 25 and 28% over the past decade. So that is really the market, the typical market range for the typical European film. And it links to perhaps to a question to what do you think about the development in the past 2 years, where in 2020 you saw that European films performed comparatively better in the absence of US blockbusters particularly, and they achieved record market shares in many countries. And just to give you the figure, the admissions to US films collapsed by 80%, but European films only 56%. So we had a record share of, I don't know, 35% or something. But in 21, as more US films came back, the market share is back to its normal level. And perhaps that's a question to you, Sabine. You mentioned you see an opportunity for European films because you expect that the competition from US films might be a bit less in the future. So perhaps you could comment on a bit, elaborate a bit on that, and perhaps Mark or anybody else.
No, yeah, it's true that during the COVID period, a lot of American movies were put directly on platform. So there was less competition in the theaters. Exhibitors had to keep the movies longer, so the word of mouth could work. So that really helped a lot European movies. And now the situation is a bit different because older people who goes to non-American movies and art house movies or more elevated movies, they're not back really in the theaters. So at this stage, we are facing this problem. We're optimistic that they will come back. In some countries, there was still some restriction in cinemas until very lately. So now the only movies that really perform super well are those blockbusters for which the American studios are spending the same budget for marketing as they spend for the budgets of the movie. So it's really impossible to compete to that. Even if we produce in English, we will never be able to compete against that. But yes, in the future, my feeling is that there will be less movies, and it's a great opportunity for the European cinema, for local films. But exhibitors will need to do box office to survive. So what are the movies that will replace those American movies? That's the real question.
That's the question.
National movies, obviously. Yeah. What else can it be?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had, during the COVID, yes, we have 27% for the national movies in Estonia. The market share was enormous. And then last year it was 14, but it didn't drop. We expected it to drop to 7, perhaps under 10% for the market share but we are talking only national films. We add also European films. As you know, Estonia is doing really well with the distribution of the European films on our local market. But what was interesting that you are right, the elderly people dropped, but younger people who were able to pay more money for the ticket, they replaced the elderly section. So from the box office, we didn't lose much. So this,
on the global box office, yes.
Yes, we talk about the art house cinema only. So it's very interesting that actually it was replaced by the new audience, kind of, anyway, in Estonia. It was quite remarkable.
Thanks for this good news. Mark, I see you active
Yeah,
there.
no, just responding to that point, I think there are European movies that do very well. You know, we released Almodovar, Parallel Mothers, or Worst Person in the World, or The Father. There is a space if you have a singular, like a singular story quality film, and you work hard on making it a must-see, there is space for that. So I wouldn't be too, and I wouldn't do. Yes, you can do the big contrast between US and Europe, but things are also complex in our ecosystem, and I think saying, like it's good that there is more space for European films, but equally the TVOD platforms or the cinemas also need some of the content from studios, which also include films like Nomadland and stuff like that. So I think we need to have a balanced view on that, and I think there's really space for quality films to strive. I'm maybe a bit too optimistic, but I really think that. And just on the point of the gentleman from under the Milky Way about the Amazon stuff, again, it's true that there is a system whereby you earn a few cents per minute's watch or per hour watched or whatever, but equally the platform is also buying pay TV titles. They also do a lot of SVOD deals or whatever. So, the market is changing constantly, but it also brings a lot of opportunities to the industry. So I just wanted to mention that. But I understand that specific scheme seems a bit much. We tried it with 2 films, and then we chose not to do that anymore. But otherwise, they've been good at buying content as well.
Yeah. And I would like also to add a point that I think that it's also very, very important to think about the circuit. Maybe these kind of movies, they don't need the same circuit as they have the big blockbusters movies. Maybe we can, for example, in Spain, it's growing a lot, the non-theatrical circuit. In Spain, for example, the cinematheques and the other screenings, they are like other kind of theaters, they are working in other ways of showing these films. Maybe the way of showing this film is not to have in a multiplex from Monday to Sunday with 3 screenings per day. Maybe we have to do a tour to find which is the way to make those films work. They are very different kind of films. They are one is a global audience, and maybe the other one is you have to work and to find this audience. So I think that it's also very, very important to think about the circuit that we are going to follow with this kind of art house film, as we say.
Good point, and it confirms basically the question that we were starting with. The appetite of the audience, what do they want to see, and how can the audience be reached with which tools? And I think that when the stakeholders dialogue resumes after summer, there will be plenty of good ideas to be discussed. I don't know if there is any remark that from the European Commission side before. I think it's time to ask our executive director to close the conference. You can have the microphone, I think, is going. There were quite many ideas that were collected. We will leave it to the meetings that come. That's very well. I don't see any further hands up. Oh, short comment. Well, you were lucky. The microphone was there.
When we're speaking about films, we're also speaking about financing. And when I'm looking at the spreadsheet of the 40 movies are produced, 75% of the income of those movies is coming from where? Theatrical. So it's very important not to shorten the window too much. There's a lot of money out there. So if you make movies that works in theatrical, the very fine financing that we get from Europe will be supported by a lot of money from ticket buying. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And very telegraphic comment, 45 seconds for you. There is a microphone coming, and then we are, I think, ready to round up.
Platform economy is working with billiard. Cinema is working with million. So we have to compete with these people, and they can take the talents, they have the power, they have the money, and they have the audience. So we should not be too selective if we want to set up European challengers. and we need to, France has invented cinema, but American people do more money with their invention than French studio. So we should learn from what works.
I think there is plenty of stuff to learn from each other, and I'm sure that we will get the same kind of message from our executive director for the closing of the conference.
So to wrap up briefly, I just want maybe to highlight one word that came often, and that is audience. I think that's what we're really talking about. I know there's also this big empty chair that is missing. It's very difficult to engage in the audience, and we know it's very difficult to also get the data that we need to see clearer. So this, I think, is a very important point that goes hand in hand with the key word for the observatory, which is transparency. We are here to make the audiovisual sector more transparent, but we can do only as good as those people who have the data and their willingness to share. Maybe then a little other remark, which is a sub-part of the audience, and that is the young audience. I don't know if the organizers of the Marché du Film have their spies today also here, but well, that's another market. And we have very few young audience sitting here, and that is the second generation of the observatory who is taking interest in the work of their parents. Maybe all of you can also do a share to help in there. Now, there are many other topics that we also have to look at, and it's really not easy to make the choices. I want to highlight to you that the observatory is having very soon a next conference on the 7th of June in Tallinn. And this will be really a sharper look at the world and the issues for the creative sector. So very specifically those that we all engage in making movies. And this will be my real big pleasure to do that together with Edith and her team in Estonia. As I said, it's going to be a hybrid event, so you can all join. It's for free. You have only to sign up at our website, and you will also be informed about the contact. It's really not complicated. And once you are on our website, you should really take a deeper look, because we have much more information, which our only goal is to share it with you, to make it as useful as possible to really promote this beautiful audiovisual sector. And if you want to talk to some of us, we are not all here for the end of the festival, but still a little bit. We have also a booth, which is to be found very close to the marina stage. It's H3 on the map, wrongfully indicated as H13. We have no issue with bad omens. We don't believe in that. I think 13 is also a very happy number. So with this, I would like to really thank the wonderful panel that we had. Really, you are so engaged. It feels that you live for what you do. Thank you for that. I think the moderators were just brilliant, as were the presentation, and you, dear audience, stay faithful to us. Come again. We should be here again next year. Thank you.